Welcome back. This is Animals in Higher Education, Part 2, where we'll be looking at service animals and emotional support animals in colleges and universities. My name is Austin, and this is Go Access, a YouTube channel dedicated to access in higher education and disability rights. So today, we're finishing up our focus on service animals and emotional support animals in colleges and universities. So let's get started. Myth number 3, there is no way to tell if an animal is a service animal. So there's no way to tell that difference between a service animal and a regular animal. That is false. A service animal must be able to perform a demonstrable task. The student should be able to clearly explain the service animal's task. So there has to be a clear understanding of what that task is, the student being able to explain that, how it relates to their disability. And again, generally, I would say if you're talking with a student about that, it should be pretty evident what that animal's being trained to do. And, the student might even offer to have that be demonstrated, but it's not required. But just getting an idea of what the animal is supposed to be doing. And you really want to get the facts. You want to understand how it relates to the student's disability, how the what exactly is the specially trained part of that task. Was the dog put in like a special training program or something to learn that specific task? And you really want to make sure that you're clear on whether the service animal qualifies before deciding whether to reject or accept the service animal. In essence, a lot of times before you're deciding to accept or reject the animal, you first want to make sure you have a good understanding of what the student is saying the task is that the animal's trained to do, and making sure that that is a really specifically trained task and not just the animal being the animal. Again, it's interesting. I thought I'd point out that there was an OCR case, Gladys Cordoves versus Miami-Dade County, where basically the plaintiff could not fully explain and that the could not fully prove that their dog was a service animal. In essence, the plaintiff lost the case because it was on them to provide the burden of proof that their animal qualifies as a service animal, and they had a hard time doing that because service animal is defined kind of loosely. You need to be able to really show that specific task, and the defendants won the case because they could not do that, and they were not able to really prove that animal was trained to do a specific task. And I think they brought in like a police officer or someone, but they didn't have enough training to really be considered an expert, and therefore there wasn't enough evidence there to really support that animal was a service animal. So the defendants won the case. Let's look now at myth number 4. Roommate allergies. Let's look now at myth number 4. Roommate allergies trump students with animals. This is an interesting one. An ESA and roommates. If a roommate or roommates are allergic or disturbed by having a pet in the dorm, they can make a request to housing. The student with the ESA will have to move. So that is, again, the ESA is only protected through the fair housing laws. It's not an ADA accommodation, which goes to the service animal, which is an ADA accommodation. So if the service animal is the issue and the roommates are allergic to a service animal, it's a little bit different because the roommate or roommates will have to move, and the student with the service animal can stay in the room. That's because that service animal has more protections and is in the ADA as compared to the emotional support animal. Housing policy. A no pet policy clause should be part of your college's housing policy. Clear explanations of the process of removing unapproved animals. Students bringing unapproved ESAs should be subject to the college's housing policy. Again, this is not really a disability office issue, but making sure that like public safety and that your housing policy is in place. So, maybe your dean of students having that policy approved, because for example, if there is an unapproved animal on campus, like someone says, oh, my emotional support animal is gonna be approved soon, but I'm just gonna bring it on anyway, you can actually notify public safety that there's an unapproved animal, and there could be a fine for that student, and making them remove their animal, and that way, you're keeping that enforcement that only emotional support animals and service animals are allowed on campus, which is generally what colleges and universities are looking for. They're not generally an animal-friendly place, meaning any animal can just come on the campus there, or stay in the dorms. It's really for a specific need. It's really to fill a specific need for a student. That's why there are service animals and emotional support animals. Again, I want to also cover neglect and abuse. It's important to report any abuse or inappropriate animal behaviors, between the student and the animal. So the student may be, not taking care of the animal and the animal whimpering, or, maybe kicking the animal or something of, physical nature. Those things should be reported. There should be a process for reporting those issues. You can look at organizations like the ASPCA, and it's important to kind of keep that, be aware of that, because if you do have, let's say, a student getting an ESA on campus freshman year, and they don't have a good relationship with that ESA, they've just recently gotten the animal, there's the stress of college, they may be forgetting how to take care of that animal. If that animal's a puppy or something like that, they may not be giving it enough food or exercise, and that may lead to the animal being neglected, and or it could even lead to abuse, too. So it's important to keep that and be aware of that. Multiple ESAs are not allowed. That is a myth. You can't limit ESAs to one per student. Students can ask to bring two ESAs. The request must be evaluated based on the accommodation being reasonable and required. That's really key, reasonable and required. So that really means that you can't, let me just go back there. You can't say, oh, it's an ESA, I need two kittens. It has to be because I want two kittens. It has to be that you really need the kittens. Or like, for example, if you have, I don't know, hypothetically, if you have one lizard or one bird, or whatever the animal is, that it has a friend, and maybe you can look up and see medically that the animal needs a second there needs to be a second ESA there in order for the animal, could be somewhat factored in, but it really needs to be that the student also, because of their relationship with the animal and everything, they need two animals. So sometimes you hear about students being like, oh, I'm going to bring two puppies or two kittens. It doesn't work like that. It's really because of a previous relationship that the animal has with the other animals, or the animals are kind of grouped together, always have been, that it would work. And also really looking at, is that a reasonable request, and does the student really need those animals, and making a clear case for that, which is very, which can be pretty difficult to do sometimes, which is why generally only one emotional support animal is what students have. But again, there are special circumstances where multiple ESAs might be warranted. Myth number 6. College disability offices should hide information relating to service animals or ESAs. That's not true. Students need to know the college's service animal and ESA policy. College disability offices should make their service animal and ESA policies available on their webpage. Mentioning ESAs or service animals in brochures could increase the number of ESA and service animal requests. And that's something that colleges are a little bit wary of, because the people generally, or let's put it this way, the students who need service animals or emotional support animals generally know that they need it. They're not needing to see it advertised and say, oh, I want to get one of these. So that's why more times than not, you won't see it mentioned directly in like a brochure or like a flyer, but it will be on the college's website what their policy is and stuff. So students who get that recommendation from a mental health provider, or who need a service animal for a specialized task, can go on the website and see what the policy is and how to get set up with their accommodations. For today, I really appreciate you tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.